Rational and Irrational Numbers, Lesson 1, Notes. Now I'm going to talk about perfect squares. What do the numbers 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, and so forth, what do they all have in common? They are all perfect squares. Perfect squares are the product of multiplying two identical numbers. In other words, 1 times 1 gives you 1. So 1 is a perfect square because 1 squared is 1. 4 is a perfect square because 2 times 2, or 2 squared, equals 4, and so forth. So, my perfect squares, the first 20 perfect squares, are as follows. 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100, 11 squared is 121, 12 squared is 144, 13 squared is 169, 14 squared is 196, 15 squared is 225, 16 squared is 256, 17 squared is 289, 18 squared is 324, 19 squared is 361, and 20 squared is 400. So those are our first 20 perfect squares that would be integers. Okay, so if I take the square root of any one of those numbers that you just wrote down, you take the square root of any one of those numbers, you would get a rational answer. If I take the square root of 64, it's going to be 8. Therefore, it's a rational number. If I take the square root of 361, it's going to give me 19. Therefore, it's a rational number. But if I take the square root of any number in between them, it would be an irrational number. In other words, let's say 55. 55 falls between 49 and 64. 49 is a perfect square. 64 is a perfect square, but 55 is not. Therefore, the square root of 55 would be an irrational answer. Or an irrational number, I should say. So, you should be very familiar with those numbers. If you don't know those, I would study that chart until you know them. A little hint here for 13 squared and 14 squared. One way to remember this, you got your 169 and then flip that around, you got your 196. Know those. I feel confident that most of you probably know up to 12 squared, but after that it might get a little fuzzy, so learn that chart. Learn your first 20 perfect squares. Real numbers. Real numbers are the set of all positive numbers, their opposites, and 0. Real numbers also include both rational and irrational numbers. Real numbers include both rational and irrational numbers. The symbol for real numbers is like an R, but there's like 2 lines that go down. So that's your symbol for real numbers. We're not going to talk a whole lot about real numbers in pre-algebra, but when you get up to your higher level maths, you will talk more about real numbers. Anyway, again, learn your first 20 perfect squares. Memorize that chart.